Hey, it's Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. It's Thursday. It's January the 29th. Another really good trading day. It was a little slow getting started. Still, we had a nice downward bias here till we hit the bottom line, and we broke the trend line here and attempted to try to go lower and couldn't have bounced off this upward trend line. It was up all day, the rest of the day. So um, it's possible that this was a little tighter than this, maybe across there like so, maybe even a little lower. This was just a little bit difficult to figure out. I mean, that's a possibility, but generally it's going to be these first couple of swings, and so that's why I liked it there. And maybe this was right here, but I originally had it like this, and the midline fits pretty good right through there. So you can see that's holding prices on the upper side. It's acting as support and resistance. Um, and that's what I went with early on, or pretty much until we reversed here. And, you know, I had a good feeling that once we bottomed here, we'd probably head back to the top. And this is a big enough channel where you probably want to take some trades to both sides. Because I looked at this early on as a possible trading range of the two lines there. But we were continuing to have a downward bias. So, but in the end, it's probably was about a two-tiered trading range there, two equal tiers. You can see that. And that looks pretty close to me. And so that we might be able to treat it like that. And then we finally broke out and went higher. But I think what it is, we just had a little slightly downward bias here, and we found support. We were overdone after the last couple of days of selling off. It was time for a rally, and we just weren't going to go any lower than that. So that's my take on it. But anyway, it was a fairly straightforward day. The only thing that was maybe a little bit different was when we got right in here. But if you had the two tiers here like I do, you're looking for prices to go lower. And really what I thought when we didn't touch here, I wasn't sure I had this right, but when we didn't get to the high and we continued down and didn't reverse till we did touch it, that led me to believe that, hey, this is probably right here, and we just didn't reach the low side. It bounced because of the support that was here previous. So that's the way I was looking at it, and that's the way I was playing it. Once we started going lower here, once we didn't make it here, but we didn't make it up there. And generally, you're going to get somewhat of a measured equal distance on a overshoot and an undershoot. If you leave out the stem there, that's about what you get, an equal undershoot on both sides. So that's a lot of times that'll be a clue. But if you weren't playing this to the downside, it was really, you know, it really could have been a little difficult right in here, because a lot of times you got to be really careful going short into that. But notice how each time it made a lower low, it was making what I would call an equal high, but making a lower low. That's generally you want to see it making lower highs and lower lows, but this was good enough considering that we didn't make it here and we turned back down before we made it back up to here. So hope that's helpful. That's the only thing I can see that would lend you to continue to think short in here and you might have just skipped this if you weren't sure. These few trades right in here, you might have skipped those if you weren't real sure. So just something to think about. But anyway, when I came in, it looked like a trading range. The first trade I saw, we came off the low side and we were heading back to the high side. We had our first break outside this little channel, and it's a two-legged pullback. Really, the second entry triggered right here. Let me make this a little bit bigger. You You can see prices broke higher there and then turned down. That should have gone a lot further when it did, and that's somewhat of a trap, and it turned back up. Um, but you couldn't go short. You didn't really want to go short here. That is a failed second entry long, but if you're playing this as a trading range, you're looking for prices to come back up here, and everything's still above the EMA, and there's a good chance you get trapped. It was more enticing to go short there. So if you did get trapped there, I would consider exiting, or definitely exiting, but maybe reversing when prices broke above that bar. Um, but I like that one to the long side because I was looking for prices to make a new high off this little channel and also retest this upper part of the range, what looked like a range. So, and then you get another correction, you end up with a double bottom. Now notice you got a double bottom here, and now you got a double bottom, and each one of them makes a slightly higher high on the right hand side. And this does look like a two-legged correction. It's not the greatest setup bar. You might have considered a limit order there, but I don't know if you'd have gotten filled much more than right at the top of the bar. And you're looking for prices to come up here, and they couldn't get it up there until they trapped people to the low side. Then they ran it up. And this one, again, was one that was tempting to go short, but notice how it ended with stems on each side. Everything's still above the EMA. The EMA is still pointing up. I think we still got the upward bias trying to reach the upper side of the range, and this time we finally got there. And guess what? It turns and goes straight down, and it shoots straight through the EMA, pulls back, tests it, turns down again. I like going short there. You're probably better to wait on this bar and wait on the break and then try to get in. But again, if you played around too much there, you might have missed that trade, and that was a really good trade. So, and now you're expecting it to come to the other side. And where does it go to? Straight to the other side. And look how it pushes through the line a little bit, pulls back, and gives you a failed second entry long and a bearish bar. That's like a breakout pull back short. That's the first break of this channel, so you know you're pushing for a new low. You don't know that it's going to shoot all the way down to the other end that quickly, but you're at least expecting that you should get a scalp out of that one. And this turned out to be a really good trade. And then, of course, now you got the break. You got a little failed break lower here. You really could consider this a move out of there, below all this support across here. And generally you're going to come back and test that again. But I like this for a long right here. I went back and forth whether or not to make it green or not. But notice the new low, pull back first entry, pull back second entry. That little matching lows, the break below that, and then it turned up, went out the other side. I just put a stop there when it looked like it was going to head up, and that moved pretty quickly. And if you didn't do that, you could have waited on this bar and a break above it, and dropped a limit order in there because it's getting close to the EMA right there, and it could touch that and turn down. So you got to get in far enough back to get out before there. But at that time, I thought I just had my line too low, maybe, and I figured we were headed to the other side, which we basically did, but it wasn't exactly what I thought it was. And then you get another pullback right here. Notice this move up. That's you could treat that like one move. So that looks like a failed second entry short, but it went lower first, right off, bounced right off the EMA, right off the trend line, turns and goes right out the other side. And that's a nice move. That was a nice setup right there. Then it pulls back. It was tempting to go long. Notice we got the overshoot right there too, so that gives you a clue that we may get a breakout, a close outside the trend line, and we did just barely, but we got one, and then it shoots up again. But that was a first entry, and then it was tempting to go long here, but the fact that couldn't get above that and ended up as closing a couple of ticks back down in, that scared me away from that one, especially with the close outside, possible close out here in the overshoot. So it's just kind of got choppy, and there is a trap to the upside right there. This one was real tempting, and really I probably should have made that one green. I think I will make it green. But the fact that we weren't back up to this top was just a little bit concerning because you never know when it's going to pull back and trap you and make one more leg up and touch that and then turn down. But this thing went out the top first and turned and went out the bottom and closed a couple of ticks lower than that. So that's a nice bearish move, and that was a quick, easy move. And then we finally, basically what we get here is a little two-legged pullback with that trap, little double top, one tick trap, and it turns down and goes out the other side. If you didn't enter right there, this is one where you have the stop just waiting on it. And if you didn't enter there, when this one closed inside as a doji too, with that where that previous support area was, I'd have been a little nervous about entering there. But I was, I liked entering on the move higher and the move out the other side. But if you didn't do that with a limit order, then I'd say you probably skip that trade. And then it pulls back, and you get a big bearish bar, and you get a second entry long that fails and turns, and same thing, it breaks out the top and turns and goes right out the bottom. And that was a nice trade. And again, I thought we'd probably move all the way down, and we don't. It bounces again. And it comes right back and tests this area again. First entry, pull back, second entry, big bearish bar. And notice how each time this thing's going a little lower. And this is more like a double top with a little trap up there. But that's such a nice bearish bar. Again, you probably think about using a limit order, and you could have got filled at least a tick back into this bar, no more than that, and it's off to the races. And it goes right through the EMA, pulls back, tests the breakout area, tests the EMA, and goes higher, and then turns and goes out the low side again. Again, I like just having a stop waiting on it there. Quick, easy move. It does give you another push up right here, and so you really could treat that like a failed second entry long, but we're so close to this low, and this is the low of the day now. And if you put the line across there, you can see that we're right at it. So especially the closes, if you use the low itself, there's enough room. So yeah, this is another one that could be green. I'm a little leery of those low of the day trades, especially when it was a little confusing as to what was going on here. The only thing you consider is that, hey, we're probably trying to go test the low, and it looked like we were going to shoot on through there. But it didn't. It held and bounced, and then I was pretty confident that this channel was right. And this is what was going on here. We bounced early, but we didn't get back to the upper side because we weren't through to the downside yet. We haven't met the lower side. Doesn't mean that we couldn't have gone higher from there, period. But generally, that's not what you're going to see happen. So, but anyway, I'll go ahead and mark that one green. I think it's a little suspect, but you definitely don't want to be entering down here. Notice that little push only goes a couple of ticks, and then we make a higher high, a higher low, and then you get a little matching lows in that one tick. This was a nice trade right here, and you just put a buy stop there if it turns back up, and of course it did and trapped everybody, and that was a nice run up. Generally, I would say you probably don't want a counter trend trade, but the reason I actually took this trade and liked this trade. This was my last trade of the morning, and it turned out to be a fairly nice trade. It did come back pretty quick, but it gives you another chance to get in and a little safer chance if you're, I like this one because of the trap and the possible trend line off those first couple of closes right there, and the fact that those closed right on that line, and it ticks lower and immediately traps everybody and turns up. So, and then you're pulling back first entry, pull back, and that's a second entry long. That's not a perfect setup bar, but look how it's closing. Everything closed inside the trend line, or right on it, basically. So I like that one for a long, even though that's not a perfect setup bar. And I don't think you'd have got filled on a limit order. You had to use a stop because it took off, and it moved. It it moves probably 4 or 5 points before it pulls back, and it kind of gives you a two-legged pullback and tests that trend line one more time, and it breaks lower again and turns and goes out the upper side. That's a second entry long. Uh, if you didn't enter there, wait on this bar to finish, and when it broke higher, try to use a limit order there, and you could have gotten filled on this one a tick or so back in it, and off it goes. And I didn't like that second entry long right back into that what I call a thin area there where there's support. It's acting as support and resistance. It's the midline of the bigger channel or the bigger trading range. So I didn't like going long into that one. But when you get the failed second entry short, and it really was not a failed second entry short. There's enough there to scalp out, but you can still treat it like one because it should have, well, that big bearish bar, it should have moved further. But when it touches this breakout, this area to the tick that was support and then resistance, and now it's acting as support and turns up on a failed second entry short, you got to like those. And plus there's enough room to get out before you get back here. It didn't matter, it went straight on through there. And then there's another double pull back with a second entry long there, but I don't think you can take that one because that's the first break of this trend line down through here, and everything's closing under it, so there's a good chance it ticks up and traps you and turns down. So I just don't think you can take that trade. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4 overlapping bars and a couple of dojis, and you're just breaking all the rules going long there. And even though it worked, you got to follow the rules if you want to be consistently profitable. So but now you got your break, and there's and it did make a measured leg on top of that. Then it pulls back, makes a lower high, pulls back, failed second entry long. Look how bearish that bar is. I liked going short there. I was really looking for a big move there, but it hung around a little bit, and then you get another um, um, notice how you got your new low, first entry, pullback. There's a second entry short right there, but it's not a very good setup, so not many people took it, and a lot of people took it as a trap and tried to get long thinking that everybody else was getting fooled, and all it was they got fooled. Um, so the trade I liked here was this is a pullback first entry, pullback second entry. It's with the trend, the little trend channel, and it's right off the trend channel. So the trade was right there, in my opinion, if you want to take it. Looking back on it, it's a lot of overlap there. So, but at the time I liked it because I thought we were going to come back and retest the lows, and I was looking for a reason. But now that I think about it, we really didn't have a break of this. But you're figuring prices are coming back here anyway. Um, So, and at that point, I thought maybe there was an overshoot right here. Turns out it wasn't an overshoot. This just turned out to be a midline. So early on, I thought that was the trend line up there, or the trend channel line with an overshoot. So I thought we were going to go lower, but I was wrong. And so, but that turned out to be a nice short. And then you get a double bottom right here on this trend line, right on the previous support. It pulls back, and it gives you a failed second entry short, so a chance to go long right there. This is one where you might think about a limit order, but I'm going to tell you, these take off so fast, I just think it's risky. And if you did use a stop right there, it looked for a minute like we may get stopped out. But so yeah, I like going long above that big bullish bar. I mean, that looks really nice, and it looked like we were going to get stopped out, and it turns and goes. So if you didn't go long there when you got that next bar, I'd take that, because this trend line is held every time we've come back to it, and that's like a triple test of it. It's like here's your first test of it, and then a double test again, and that kind of proved it, because I think everybody, the smart traders, were probably like me. They're expecting prices to come lower again here because this is the first break of what looks like a two-tiered channel. And so when you got that double test and it held, if you follow the rules, you're going long right there. So you could have entered either place. I'm not going to mark them both separately, but you could have entered there both places. And then you're working higher. You get this is just a little two-legged pull back to this trend line, move up, move down, and then it turned back up. And it did go lower and then turn out and go out the. I think you should wait on that bar right there and a break above it with a stop or a limit order. And then you get another pullback right here. And now it's pretty obvious we're going higher here. And so you're looking for prices to go higher. Got my line out of whack there. Up to this line. So I like going long there. I mean, that's really a failed second entry. The failed second entry short really is right there, but it's not off the trend line until here. So it's similar to that, but and it is getting on up there. I don't think that was back to the high of the day. That's another thing. If you draw your line across there, I believe it's a pullback to that area right there. And so, yeah, that was at a high of the day. So thinking about that a little more, I almost want to make this one green. It's real borderline. I'm just going to go ahead and change it to green because if you've had a pretty good day, this is not a high probability trade that you'd want to take. It is right off the trend line. It does look like a failed second entry short. There's a little bit of probably a trap right there. But anyway, I'm going to leave it green. So, and then you get your first break of this trend line. You get two legs back. There's a first entry right there, but I think you got to wait on the second entry, and then you get a little higher bar there and a second entry right there. So I like that one. And you're looking for prices to retest this and probably go all the way to here. But we just made a new high and had another correction. And I don't have my lines on that one. But you got your break above it right there, pull back, and a little double bottom. It didn't quite make a new low, and off it goes again. But the market's pretty strong to the upside by this time. And, and then there's actually, this gets you into the 2 o'clock hour. Then there's a failed second entry short that reverses. I'll go ahead and, if I was trading, I'd probably take that too. So, because it's a double test of that. Look, we've tested that midline 1, 2, 3 times, 4 times there. So that's a good sign that it's holding and it's support, and we're probably going higher. And I didn't mark anything. That gets you into the 2 o'clock hour, so nothing after that. But a lot of trades today, a lot of good setups. Most of your shorter term trend lines are following the rules. You get to break a new high and it reverses. There was maybe one in here or so in here that might have been a little bit questionable. I think this first one, but I think more people were looking at this as a trading range, and we probably did get the close outside right there already. But that's such a long move down, and it didn't make a new high here. After that, it came back and made the new low, and so that might have been what people were looking at right there on that new low. So. But other than that, it was fairly straightforward. You got this one coming down, your break, a new low. This one coming up, you had your break. It's not much of a close, but you had a close, couple of legs up, and then you're coming down, break, new low, 2 legs. And this is more like a trading range type deal. But if you drew your trend lines, it probably all still works. And then a nice one down, a break, a move to a new low, and then you started working up. And everything was, lately it's amazing how straightforward everything is. If you're drawing your lines and following the rules, it's pretty straightforward. So, but I'm not going to waste any more time today. That was the trades. That's what we saw. I'm going to wrap it up. It's, it continues to be a really good trading month, and it's been a pretty good week again this week, yesterday, and we had one day in here mixed up that it got a little bit iffy for a little bit, but it just continues to be plenty of volume, lots of movement, lots of opportunity to make a lot of money, and I'm probably going to be on track for one of my best months in a long time. Probably already was a week or so ago, but there's just been some really good trading, and Um, take advantage of it while we got it, because you don't know when it's going to slow down again. But I'm going to wrap it up. This is Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.